1, 2,
Standing
go.
by.
Hey everybody, you're listening to and possibly watching on our live stream the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books. You don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or as I said, possibly streaming. This is take 2. We had streamed earlier at 9:30. It's now 9:37, and something went wrong. So hoping things stick fine tonight.
On the extra monitor here in the control room, it appears to be good.
Well, that's very good to hear. Very, very good to hear. We've had a week of surprises, as you can mildly put it. And when we talk about HeroesCon, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But we are going to be talking about The Flash, the new movie in the DC Extended Universe series of films that premiered last Thursday night. And it actually is a film that Steve and I saw together, in person, together in a movie theater. We believe only the second time we have seen a movie together. The first was Upgrade, one of those sci-fi horror. The same director, he went on to The Invisible Man. That was his next film.
I believe so. Yeah, and he's doing something else, and I'm
there's an Upgrade TV series in development.
Yeah, which is pretty fantastic.
And I know with his past credits, he's like a Saw executive producer and was it not Divergent? It's a movie that's out right now. I can't even think. Something that's out right now. And I cannot think of it. But he has something going on. Insidious. That's
one. It's the next Insidious installment, which I think is coming out next month.
Yeah.
So but he's he's definitely moved on to doing a lot of big things. I mean, he worked on all the Saw movies apparently, not in the director chair, but
he's high school friends with Steve Wan. Is that his name? James Wan. James Wan.
Yeah. Who of course has a big role in the DC universe of films with Aquaman.
Mm-hmm. So it's all tied together in this multiverse. It's a multiverse.
In other words, it's all who you know in the industry. Yeah. Get your jobs.
But beyond The Flash, and we will be talking about the film itself, but also some of the ancillary issues in regards to its fairly muted response and box office this week. We'll also be talking about some comic books, our experience at HeroesCon, which is unfortunately not a very happy tale on some fronts, but we made the best of it. The whole trip was weird, but we'll get into that. And we got our other segments. We've got gets. Steve's got gets from the con. I have other gets. You may ask, why didn't I get gets at the con? Well, we'll tell you all about that.
Oh, yeah.
A lot to take in. It's going to be a lot to take in. You'll also notice that Caleb is not with us tonight. Unfortunately, he could not join us. He's had some family issues that he had to attend to. He'll be back next time. And, hopefully soon we'll get Brian, too. It looks like there's been a little more time he's been spending at home, it seems. So
yes,
maybe we'll catch him one of the windows there, one of those windows. So
tie him down to a chair at his computer desk.
All right, Steve, you are our plot dude. So why don't you take it off talking about The Flash, the new movie from, as I said, the DC Extended Universe, and tell us about the basic plot, and then we'll each chime in about what we thought about.
So, so the Flash, again, it's was considered, I think, probably it's one of the last of the DCEU movies that kind of spun out of the Snyderverse. Obviously, we all know that things are going to be rebooted. We've got James Gunn that's working very diligently on the phase one of the next stage of these DC films. Um, but this Flash movie, of course, features many of the same cast members, the same versions of the heroes that we saw in the Snyder directed films. Um, but this film is directed by Andy Muschietti, and he actually is going to be moving on to The Brave and the Bold. I think he was actually tapped to direct that upcoming Batman film that is going to be part of the interconnected universe. So that's there's going to be some continuity, I think, in the people who have worked on this film. But this one in particular stars Ezra Miller in his role, reprising his role as the Flash from Batman v Superman and the Justice League. We also have the return.
And remember the Flash television series? He had that cameo.
And the Flash television series, yes, he also did make an appearance there, which was a pretty cool occurrence there for the big Crisis crossover in the Arrow's final season. That was really cool. That's one of those few moments of TV, especially this type of TV, where you're like, oh my God.
Yep. Because there was nothing, there was no spoiler about that. That just came out of.
It was a shock. It was a surprise, and it was very cool. And then also we do have this is not a spoiler. We have the return of Michael Keaton in the role of Batman that he had from the Tim Burton films in the late 80s, early 90s. We also have Sasha Calle making her debut as Supergirl, as Kara Zor-El. We also have in minor roles Ron Livingston and Maribel Verdú Verdú that play Barry Allen's parents, which factors into a lot of the plot and a lot of the reason why everything happens the way it does. So very basically, we're reintroduced to Barry Allen as the Flash, doing a really cool, rescue, all sorts of things, and essentially sets himself up as the janitor for the Justice League. The big players, the heavy hitters, they make all the big crazy have the big crazy battles with supervillains or whatever, try to avert disaster. But of course, a disaster and collateral damage happens, but Barry's there to kind of save the day in a very fun sequence that leads into the titles, that has him rescuing babies and a dog. There's a microwave and a burrito in there, and there's a nurse. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to see.
Possible child slaughter never looks so fun.
Yeah, exactly. Possible infanticide. Yeah, but we also see the other side of Barry's life, where he is a forensic criminologist, analyst for Central City PD, and his life there isn't so great. Unfortunately, his coworkers don't seem to respect him. His boss definitely doesn't respect him, and with some other issues that he's had, and the upcoming parole hearing for his father, we're also introduced to Iris Allen, who makes her debut here in the film.
No, wait a second. Didn't she appear sort of in Justice League? That was not Iris in that rescue scene. Okay.
Yeah, no. So this is the first time she's making an appearance. Okay. And anybody who's like a super nerd of the Snyder Cut will probably prove me wrong. But this is the first time she's really appeared and interacting with Barry Allen. And in this film, or in the history of this film, they were really good friends when they were kids, and they grew apart in college. Yep. And this is kind of this is them reconnecting, and of course she's reconnecting because she kind of wants to get the story on Barry Allen's father, who is up for parole after murdering or being found guilty of murdering Barry's mother years before, when Barry was a kid. In this process, Barry discovers that he's able to go back in time. It's actually a very small thing that he realizes when he's trying to run really fast to get things done. And by going back in time, he thinks, I might be able to change things. He has a sit-down talk with his best buddy, Bruce Wayne, who, of course, warns him against doing this, but he goes ahead anyway in an attempt to change things so that his mother never dies, or that his father is home and presumably would prevent the death of his mother, the murder of his mother. Well, he puts things into motion and ends up not back in the present, but still in the past, where he, or at least his alternative version, is only 18 years old and still in college. So his mother hasn't died, but things clearly are not the same as they would have been. This is not the same world that he's found himself back in after changing something. And through that, there's a lot of other changes too that they find out, some really fun little tidbits here and there, some jokes, alternate reality jokes that pop up. But also, this is a world without metahumans. This is a world where there is no Superman, where Batman's much older and has long since retired. And this is also, unfortunately, a world where General Zod has just arrived and is about to terraform the Earth, just like in the plot of Man of Steel from 2015. So it's a very interesting situation that they all find themselves in. Throughout this, they also do discover Kara Zor-El, or Supergirl, and rescue her. And Barry, of course, has been able to drag his other younger self along, giving him powers, unfortunately with the loss of his, in a way to try and set things right and to fix this world, save this world from destruction, but also find a way to go back home and live his life where, again, his mother is alive. It's, sort of kind of the plot of what led into Flashpoint, the big comics situation that was used to reboot the DC universe in 2010, 2011. But definitely very different. This is not the same thing. But it does have some, let's say, similar outcomes in the finale of this film. So no spoilers yet, but I think we're about to go into those. How did you feel about this, Bill?
Okay. I think it's a real shame that the lead actor has so much baggage because he gave a great performance in this. In a lot of circumstances in the previous films, there were times where Barry was like a one-note presence. The comic relief, however you want to characterize it. There were points where he was like that. With this, however, I don't think I'm spoiling a big plot point, because if you just see one commercial, you notice one particular dynamic. There's a present day Barry, for lack of a better term, and a young Barry.
Yeah.
There were times I forgot that there were two different actors, that they were not two different actors, that it was the same actors. The performances are so distinct that I just thought he did a great job. I thought in this film, again, we had talked about moments where it was just comic relief. This was a really well balanced mix, from an acting perspective, of the comic and the dramatic. I do think he's pretty much toast at this point as a personality, unless there is some change, because if even a portion of this stuff is to be believed, it's kind of twisted. And I can totally understand people skipping on this one because of some of those controversies. I think his pretty much removal from the public eye is some testimony that he realizes that, and Warner's realizes that that there is toxicity whenever his name is attached. But I think it's a shame because there's a very good actor there, and
Yeah.
I've never said that before. Through Snyder Cut, it was just like I said, he was the comic relief very often.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt here there was so much better, and that just goes to another issue that I would just want to talk about. The film is, I'm the biggest DC Comics fan in the world, but I am just as quickly able to recognize that many of the DC Comics films of the extended universe variety have lacked heart.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have that here. It's a very heartfelt story.
Mm-hmm.
There certainly were moments where I was choking up. One criticism I had seen was if the film had just if the film was just the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes, there's a great movie there. I don't know where I come down on that, but I did feel that what has been lacking in many of the other films was present in this.
Mm.
The ones that really worked: the first Wonder Woman, the first Aquaman, the first Shazam, and the second Suicide Squad. There's things about those films that really sincerely work. And I also am not surprised that the box office response was muted, because it does feel like it's a losing prospect at this point. We know that after this year, this series of films are not going to be in action anymore. And there's also something to be said about the climate that we're in right now, where films stream 45 to 70 days after they finish their theatrical runs. And I've certainly been guilty of waiting for the streaming to hit on numerous films. I understand that dynamic. There's still something called COVID-19 out there, and you have to take your precautions. That's why I miss certain films like Spider-Man, like the last Spider-Man live action. I didn't see that in the film in the theaters. And I think there's factors there's meta factors that affect the muted response, but there was a lot of fan service in this movie, but none of it felt how can I say this? Some of it was cheeky, but none of it felt insincere. I think none of it felt rote. I'm trying to find the right word for it, but cynical. None of it felt necessarily cynical. I think we are gypped in that this likely is the only appearance of Sasha Calle as Supergirl, because she did a wonderful job with relatively little screen time. You definitely got a sense of what Kara is like, and I wasn't the biggest proponent of Keaton as Batman, but how can you not have a little bit of thrill seeing him say some of those lines? And just the Batwing. I mean, that I know that was like our first fanboy moment, when that came into view.
Yeah.
And I do hope people give this one a chance at some point, because it is well crafted, and it does have heart, and it does have great action. Once we start moving with Zod's world forming, it basically doesn't let up after that point. I understand that some people are very not taken in by the special effects choices. My own feeling is they tried to distance themselves from the TV series, which on a limited budget did a fairly good job with super speed and some other and Speed Force dynamics and all of that. The cameos I thought were clever. We get to see certain characters in a scene together we've never seen before. And I know the director's cut is fairly long, and I do think Muschietti has a pretty good relationship at this point with DC going forward. That might be a director's cut we'll actually have an opportunity to see. We got one of 3 endings that was filmed. All of them sounded really clever, and oh, what happened here? Am I still here?
Happened. Yeah, you're still there.
I'm there.
Yeah.
We're cursed. We are cursed these last few days.
You're still streaming too. Everything's good. I'm checking it.
But yeah, I see it moving there. And my hands just went up. I just see it on the video there. But I really hope people give this one a chance that didn't see it in the movie theater during this go round. The thing that I mentioned is, there wasn't a 3D version. There is an IMAX version. They seem to be under promoting it in some capacity on that frame. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was Ant-Man observations with IMAX screenings that were like 1/10 filled. So I wouldn't be surprised if they saw that tentpole and kind of retracted. But I think the box office is disappointing. It's up to 70 million now domestically, and I'm pretty sure it'll break 100. But that's not a 100 is not anything to celebrate. But this is also a time where a lot of studios do not have a lot to celebrate. I mean, a Pixar film premiered under 30. The latest,
which I did also see this week, and I really enjoyed, but it's not getting the love.
The latest Fast and Furious is underperforming. John Wick is underperforming to a certain capacity. So I don't think it's the death of the movie theater.
Cinema's gone. Streaming's the way to go.
This was the exact same news resource that was saying, that Super Mario Brothers, $500 million domestic is saying that theaters are back. Just shut up, everyone.
It doesn't matter. It's people. These movies are made years in advance. Of the actual, week, month, even year sometimes that they premiere, and it's a crapshoot. I mean, you have to be able to predict exactly what's going to happen and what will be popular when the film is ready to be premiered. And in this case, in this environment, I mean, coming after Ant-Man, I'm glad that you mentioned it. Ant-Man 3 had a lot of the exact same criticisms that we're hearing about this movie. Not so much a toxic star, but CGI that people thought was
the toxic star happened later. Yeah,
that happened later. But that's very true. Very true. But CGI that people don't like. Oh, the multiverse is so confusing, or
on that
universes are confusing.
On that point, after MCU and the Spider-Man animated films, and what this film touched, and Everything Everywhere All at Once, I do think a break from multiverse films is somewhat justified. I do think that criticism is somewhat justified. We've had a lot in a fairly short period of time.
It's very true. And since 2022, we have had, I think, maybe 6 different films that are focusing on a multiverse in some way, shape, or fashion. But yeah, my personal feelings of this, I really enjoyed it. I agree with you with Ezra Miller. I feel that, what his personal life and all of that, and I like to, try to extract the artist from the art. Or the actor from the character here, but I feel like
it's not always easy.
I feel that personally,
it kills me that Morrissey is doing shows, and I'm saying not now.
I feel that Ezra Miller and many other actors who have fallen into these kinds of issues with their personal life being, showing them to be really terrible people or just toxic people, it's squandering their talent. It's really, it's a shame, because I would have liked to see more Ezra Miller Flash. And I think we could have potentially had that in this new universe that's being planned if, what he's been doing over the past several years, he hadn't been doing. But unfortunately, the great job that he did playing himself against himself, playing Barry Allen and just did a great job. Just like you, I forgot that there was not 2 people playing these characters. I love the interaction with Michael Keaton. I love the interaction with Sasha Calle. I think they, there was such a, they did such a great job, Ezra, did such a great job working with these other actors. The chemistry was there, and I do, one of my criticisms here was that Supergirl didn't get enough screen time. I wanted more Supergirl. I wanted tons more Supergirl. But at the point where she came in the plot, it was really towards the second half of the movie, and now we're going towards the climax. But I think I enjoyed this movie a lot. I enjoyed a lot what they tried to say. I was not bored at any point in this movie. For a 2.5-hour movie, I mean, it kept moving, and it moved well.
It actually
Quiet moments had a lot of humor.
2.5 hours. It felt much shorter.
Exactly, and quiet moments
had long.
But quiet moments had a lot of humor. You had a lot of character beats that were hit. One of the criticisms that I had also read was that this is not the Barry Allen I know. It's like, well, it's not. It's the movie Barry Allen. It's the DC Extended Universe Snyderverse version of Barry Allen.
It's
where he's kind of
the TV show is not the Barry Allen. The 1990 TV series is not the Barry Allen I know.
Exactly.
But there's a lot you can do with a character.
Exactly.
The basics of his story are all there.
And and I think I really enjoyed what this movie tried to do, and I think succeeded in many aspects. And going back to trying not to spoil too much here, but I am going to spoil one of those cameos at the end. So warning, warning, warning. There is a point where we're seeing other multiverses come, and in one of them we have a certain version of Superman that we have never been able to see on screen. And I did learn today that it actually was a filmed cameo. With this particular actor donning a recently remade Superman costume that he never got to wear in the unfortunately canceled Superman Lives, I believe was the name of that film. But it was a filmed cameo, and again, the CGI was a choice. It was specifically a choice for this film. It was done in a way to look kind of strange and plasticky and fake on purpose, presumably. I don't necessarily agree with that choice so much, but I do understand the reason for it, or at least justification for that reason. So that it was, to see things from Barry Allen's perspective, because he's so sped up, things get very, uncanny valley and plasticky and strange and smoothed out in odd ways. Sure, I mean, that could be the explanation. Who knows? Especially with the amount of money that they spent on this film, that you would think that would, that would have to be a conscious decision. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fun reveals at the end. I think it was great. It really kept with the character of the film. I am sad to see that this is not enjoyed as much. But the reasons for some people giving, they don't want to support Ezra Miller. Some people just, they heard the bad buzz around the special effects and were like, I'll go see it on TV. Or the fact that they can. In 6 weeks, it'll be on.
That this series of films is coming to an end.
That's again another one.
Underwhelmed by some previous entries. The last one was underwhelming, though we came out on the positive side of it. I also have to commend you, Steve, on being relatively cagey in the way you talked about that cameo.
Anybody who knows what we're talking about obviously knows who this is.
And I thoroughly enjoyed the last cameo. I thoroughly enjoyed the last cameo. In the film proper, there's a bumper. There's a post-credit scene, which is great.
Okay. But we did get to see, speaking of cameos that are not a surprise, we did get to see, Bruce. We did get to see the Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman in some capacity. The Snyder versions of those. So we did get to see some of those. We did not get to see Cyborg, but there was a fleeting reference to it. So. To him as a character, just not the actor, unfortunately.
Friendly Transformer, friendly Terminator. Yeah.
It's sad to say, but again, reasons for that too. It's just it's kind of sad when reality and the filmmaking apparatus kind of infringes on our enjoyment of a film for entertainment, of a fictional film. that all these other things come to play. But
Yeah.
that's life, I guess. But yeah, so I liked it. I enjoyed it.
I
Was it
did
the best
too.
movie? Absolutely not. But it was great. It was great fun, and
I
I love
definitely
seeing
did.
the Flash. And we've lost Bill. Bill has disappeared. um, so uh, so yeah, so once Bill gets back, we're going to be talking about comics that we've read in relation to the Flash that we think would be a really good really good stepping point if you're not familiar with the Flash, if you're not familiar with either the Barry Allen version or any of the other versions of the Flash that are out there. Um, they're a good place to start. And I know Bill had a couple older ones that he wanted to talk about, and hopefully he is coming back. There he is. Awesome.
There I am.
Hello.
There I am.
Yes. I had to vamp up here all by myself. I guess I had to vamp. I had to vamp.
Ay, ay, ay. Well,
Um,
speaking of, well,
yeah.
not yet. We'll talk more about IAA later. But something that's become a hallmark on our show, because I think we basically
Yep.
covered the film. Something that's become a hallmark on our show is we make recommendations of comics and graphic novels featuring many of the characters in the films that we talk about, ones that we would recommend. Now, The Flash, I have to say, for me, has never been a big favorite.
Mhm.
I've been familiar with the character for, at this point, nearly 50 years. It'll be 50 years this year. But, Barry doesn't necessarily grab me. Certainly not in the way Wally did. I
Yeah.
absolutely love Wally West. I especially love Wally West as Kid Flash because I do think it's probably the best Silver Age costume apart from Spider-Man. It just has such a sleek, elegant look that I fell in love with the costume before I knew a thing about the character. So Barry's not my Flash, and I'm sure we can talk about
Hashtag not my Flash.
not my Flash. But I absolutely love Jay Garrick.
Yeah.
He's certainly one of my favorite Golden Age characters. But Barry never resonated with me. But that does not mean I don't have a history with the character. So I tried to find like just one comic, just one book that I would say, hey, this is something I would give somebody to say why the Flash was special. So we have some graphics here. This is my very first Flash comic, and I think it's pretty loaded. We have a guest appearance from Green Lantern, and we also have someone who was more known as Professor Zoom than Reverse Flash, I think, at the time. Same name there. Oh, he's called Reverse Flash right on the cover. But they have a weird team up where Green Lantern is framed for being a master criminal in the 25th century due to shenanigans on Reverse Flash's part. But, for a very first Flash issue, you got what really is like his main foe, who's literally a mirror image of him and one of his best friends. And it was a great issue to be introduced to the character to. But I wouldn't recommend that. There's another book just a few years later. This came out in early January 1977. This is Flash number 248. And this is one of the comics that if you had to run into the burning house, you would take. This is one of them just because of the story behind this. In January of 77, there were a lot of blizzards. There was a big one in New York State later in the month, but one of the very big snowstorms was right after the first of the year. And what happened with DC Comics at the time was they would publish certain books on a Tuesday and then other certain books on a Thursday. Usually the books that were published on a Thursday tend to be giants. Like if you had like a 50 or 60 cent book, it normally was published at the end of the week. So what I normally would do is I would go to the drugstore. Yes, the drugstore was where I picked up my comics, Main Street in Kindercamack Pharmacy. And I had gotten my books earlier from the Tuesday collections, and there was the big storm was coming in on Wednesday afternoon. And I wanted, like cards or candy or something. Now, I was 9 years old. Keep in mind, like, you would not let kids walk this distance by themselves today at all. But it was no problem walking like 6 blocks at that point at 9 years old and coming back. You know, it was just the way we grew up. And my mother said, it's okay to go out, but you've got to be home before the snow starts. So I go, and I'm shocked because of the impending storm. They actually made the deliveries for the Thursday books a day earlier. So this book I was totally not expecting was on the stand. So I had enough money and I got this book, and I got home, and literally as I opened the door, the snow started. So I may have used the Speed Force, I'll say, to get home before the snow started with my little 9-year-old feet running down the street. But it's just a very fond memory. And you'll see here, there's like this master villain. Looks a lot like Carmine Infantino, who had just been removed from DC as their editor-in-chief. So there's some meta stories going on. There's a lot of meta history with the Flash. But the book that I would recommend the most is a book that was before I started reading. This is Flash number 215. And you'll see here, Jay Garrick it is a beautiful Neil Adams cover. There's a lot of death and implied death in regards to the Flash covers from the Silver and Bronze Age, and this is no exception. This was my introduction to my favorite DC villain, who is Vandal Savage. And in the storyline, Vandal Savage, who is immortal thanks to a comet that had hit the Earth, and he had absorbed the energies, and that's why he's immortal. He finds he's actually aging, and Vandal Savage is very big on kidnapping, and he like kidnaps the Flash so that he can use their energy to resustain his life, to go back in time at the time of the meteor that hit the Earth in Neanderthal times. And they do that, they reluctantly help, but it actually turns out he's too close to the meteor and it kills him, or he appears to be killed. So that's the Vandal Savage story. The best thing was, though, that there were 2 stories printed in this, and the other story was the first Silver Age appearance of Vandal Savage, which was also the second team up of the Flash of Earth 1, Barry Allen, and the Flash of Earth 2, Jay Garrick, after Flash 123. And it also was the reintroduction to the Justice Society of America, which, of course, Vandal Savage had kidnapped because he loves kidnapping. So there's just a lot of Silver Age fun, but you're also entering the Bronze Age here, and there's some Bronze Age sensibilities, and you know, I don't think you really would have had people pining over getting older in a Silver Age book, whereas in Bronze Age book, the sense of mortality would be a much more likely topic. And having them both in the same comic, I just think this is a great introduction to the concepts of the characters, multiverse, what separates Barry from Jay, how they are, but also how they are similar. It's just a great comic to have, both for the main story and the reprint. And this is the one I would recommend to people. You know, again, normally we usually go for stuff that has been collected, but if you do have the DC Unlimited app, 215 with both stories is on there. So
yep,
that I would recommend.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't read a lot of the Silver Age Flash, because kind of like you, I didn't really get into the Flash originally. Although at the time that I was starting to read comics, what was on TV? The first comic book live action show ever that I knew of, which was The Flash. And I also had like a little crush on, on the actor, so that kind of helped.
John Wesley Shipp.
Yep.
And I also love seeing that the climate exists so that he could reignite his association with the character in various
Absolutely.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. He got to be on the Flash TV show in 2 separate roles, at least 2 separate roles. Yeah. One as Barry Allen's father, and then again as Jay Garrick, the Golden Age Flash / Earth 2 Flash. But yeah, I also didn't know a lot about Barry Allen, barring the TV show. But I did go back when I went back into comics after a long pause back in 2011, it was a good time for me. I was one of those target customers that DC gained with their New 52 initiative. And in the New 52 initiative, they dropped Wally West, sent him off to the void somewhere. So the Flash was once again just Barry Allen. And that was the Barry Allen, or the version of Barry Allen, that I got to experience again. This, the New 52 version created a new status quo. This was post Flashpoint, where all the shenanigans happened, and they're bringing everything kind of back to a new status quo. Barry Allen had been Flash for a while at this point. He's already been a hero for a period of many years at this, at the start of issue number 1. So I went back and I reread that first story arc, Flash 1 through 5 of Mob Rule, which set up Barry Allen, really did a great job of introducing him, his job, where he is, what kind of person he is, and his powers. They explained his powers pretty well, and even gave him a new power, or a newish power, I should say. They reinvented sort of his Speed Force brain kind of situation. So let me pull that up here. And also, I do have to say, having the team of Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, who I've always butchered his last name, but Buccatello.
No, it's Buccellato.
No, Buccellato. Yes, it is Buccellato.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I guess I butcher it every time. Having them as the writing team, and then Francis Manapul on art. I mean, the man's a genius. I just love the way he lays out the page. Splash pages are so dynamic, and it's perfect for this book, because this is a book about a man who runs super fast, can be in multiple places almost simultaneously because of his speed. And the lightning just kind of breaks up the action. And in a lot of these splash pages, even something as simple as a title page like this from the first issue, really kind of sets the style of this comic, that it is a very quick, dynamic. There's lots on the page, lots is going on. There's so many places where you can put your eye. But I absolutely love this. And of course, the iconic first issue image has been used. That sort of running Barry Allen, for front on, has been used many times. And I think down, here on the first page, or first issue, is great. Just absolutely gorgeous. But in this book, in this series, we are, like I said, reintroduced to Barry Allen and his relationship with Patty Spivot, who is his coworker at the forensics lab in Central City PD. And we also are introduced to a new villain who also happens to be an old friend of Barry's, Manuel Lago, who is known by not necessarily his villain name, but the villain name of all of his hundreds of clones, Mob Rule, who are looking for a way to save themselves from just dying, because they are clones. Their genome is imperfect, and they have a tendency to just die after a few months or a few years. It's unpredictable. So in their attempt to kidnap Dr. Elias, who becomes a major character in the New 52 Flash, and his genome research, the Flash is made aware of this gang, this group that looks like his friend. And through the next several issues, he figures out a way to stop them, to save not just his city from a mysterious EMP that blows out all of the power, but also from several of his friends from Mob Rule, including Dr. Elias himself, in a way to attempt to save his friend. And I think it's just really great. There's some wonderful cliffhangers. There's the new Speed Force power where Elias tells Barry, hey, not Barry, but Flash, hey, you tap into the Speed Force. It's not just a physical force. It can also be a mental force. You have the ability to just think faster than anybody, to find those connections. And he does. And there's some beautiful splash pages that deal with that too. And it's just, this is actually a great cover that kind of illustrates that he is able to see probabilities and possibilities and calculate everything in an instant. And Manipul does a really great job here, but then also within the issue, kind of showing what that looks like. But the story, again, it's only 5 issues. Really does a great job reintroducing Barry Allen in the New 52. And it is also, if you can't find the collected edition, it is on the DC Infinite app, so you can also just take a look on that. And I believe the first issue is free, so if you aren't a paying member, you will still be able to read the first issue. And if you wish to, to actually subscribe, you can get access to every issue, which is great.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you brought up Brian Buccoletto, because I think he's a very underrated colorist.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but also a writer. I mean, he was one of the plotters. He was the co-plotter for this.
Yeah, I think he was. I think in terms of actually dialoguing, I think he did the lion's share of that.
Yeah.
But
I just
talented guy, and
I mean,
neither of them
Manipul
get
alone.
enough work right now.
know.
The last thing I remember Manipul on was Justice League No Justice, and even that's like a few years ago at this point. So
yeah, I think he is doing some other work, not with DC necessarily, but yeah, I mean, I would have, if this were 2011, 2012, I would have thought, okay, Manipul's going to be your number.
But and it's also a situation where he hopped from the Flash to the same team on Detective Comics and then on Trinity. So there was a long time where you had a Francis Manipul book every month. Yeah.
So maybe he's due for a resurgence.
Yeah.
It's been
I thought the Flash was not one of the marquee DC New 52 relaunches, but it certainly got the character. They certainly got Barry, and
I could tell you right now that I have every single issue of the Flash that's been published, and all the tie-ins and specials and annuals and everything since 2011, because of the impression that it made on me. I've got a big backlog of what I need to read, but I was reading religiously for like the first.
There's been good writers. Joshua Williamson did some great stuff.
Van Jensen has been on it. I just
repeated stuff a little too often, but that was fine. The guy that's on it right now, Adams, is very good. And I believe 850 issue 850 coming out. It's a big anniversary issue that probably might have next DCBS box.
800. It's coming up the same month as Wonder Woman 800. So you get.
And I think it's returning to the legacy numbering after that point. Yeah. So
they were doing the legacy numbering. No, they were already doing the legacy numbering, but
they were doing the legacy numbering before New 52. So the tail after Fastest Man Alive.
Yep.
I think, or it was just before Fastest Man Alive, which was when Bart briefly had the Flash.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all getting
it's all good. But it has been legacy numbering up till now. But I think they might restart the numbering, at least for temporarily, and then they'll go back probably issue 900 or whatever. So but yeah, so those are I think those are pretty good places if you want to read more about Barry Allen.
Yeah, and there's other great runs. Mark Waid had a very long association with the title during Wally's years. Grant Morrison and Mark Millar had their run, and then Jeff Johns, that was really his breakthrough. Much more than Stars and Stripe, or from Flash he got the Avengers gig, and just a trajectory that just kept going upward and upward. And especially with Waid and Johns, some of the stuff they did with the Rogues Gallery is just great.
Absolutely.
Now I'm thinking of like other things I could have provided except for other than
but that's good. I mean, that just goes to show there's a lot out there if you want to read about some good Barry Allen stuff. I mean, good
Wally West stuff. Very good Wally West.
And Wally West stuff. If you're a Wally West fan, who is the Flash now, in the main comics title, he's the primary Flash.
Barry's still active though. Barry's still active as in terms of the superheroics. It more relies on Wally than anything else. The Barry is kind of a he's kind of almost like a Illuminati figurehead. Really, that's basically his role. But he's still out there. I mean, there's still Barry out there. And, we'll see what happens post dawn of DC to do Justice League. All this exciting stuff happening. All right. So Steve and I were together for HeroesCon in Charlotte, North Carolina. I flew down first to Charlotte and then to Winston-Salem, where Steve and his husband Jason live, and we got together for the first time in 2 years because of COVID, right?
Yep, because the last time that we were in the same physical place was Baltimore.
It was 2 years.
Yeah, 2021.
Yeah, so and things didn't go as planned for me. Let's just put it out.
Let's just say the first day was a good day.
The first day was a very good day. It was the day that was expected. I did my con shopping. I have my issues with I have some issues with my feet, so I do more panels than usual. But we sat through some really good panels. I sat through the back issue. I don't want to say sat through, so it makes me like I could tolerate it. But I saw the back issue panel while you were at an LGBTQIA panel, and then we met up for first for the for the Jeff Smith Bone panel, which was excellent.
Who's on screen now? Oh yeah.
And then after that, we went right back into the same room for the Jonathan Hickman's panel. So, so we got some good stuff. Ran into people that we were hoping to see. And when the two of us went out to dinner with John Carpenter, not the director, the other John Carpenter in North Carolina, all of a sudden I woke up in the middle of the night after being asleep for about an hour in tremendous pain in my foot. And I thought it was a very bad sprain. I basically could not walk. I did not get much sleep. As the day went on, it was pretty clear it was not a sprain, but it was a severe gout attack. The worst I've ever had. There was a point I basically couldn't walk. Luckily, the hotel had a wheelchair, so that for Saturday we were able to get in the car and go over and see some people I was really hoping to see at the art auction. And Steve, I thought you had a surprisingly good time at the art auction. You're talking with Bean and with Cam, and yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of people there that I didn't think I was going to see anybody that I knew, and of course, they immediately were like, "Hey, oh!" And it was like it's just really hilarious that some people who I hadn't seen in probably about 6-7 years, from the EOC board, were like, "Oh, there's that Steve guy that we hung out with randomly." But the art auction was wild. So this was the first for the 10 plus years that I've been going to HeroesCon. This is the first time I actually ever went to the Weston Art Auction, which is every Saturday. So the second day of HeroesCon, it's Saturday night, and the artists, what they have during the rest of all day Friday and all day Saturday at the con, is they have a separate stage set up where many artists are actually creating works that will then be part of the art auction. There are commissions that have been pre-printed, pre-painted, whatever, pre-embroidered, as it were, for the art auction on Saturday night. But you can actually see some of the works being created, being made, painted in front of you or drawn in front of you throughout Friday and Saturday, and then Saturday night bid on them. If you got some deep pockets, because oh my God, there were some heavy bids on some of these, including one of my favorites was a Punk Storm portrait from Brian Stelfreeze, I believe it was. Gorgeous. What did that end up going for, Bill?
I think $9,000.
$9,000.
Yeah, I don't have that to spend. I don't have that to spend.
No. No.
But there was, and you had mentioned the embroidery. It was a reproduction of ASM number 62, which is where Spider-Man fought Medusa, and it was gorgeous. Seeing that up close, I mean, the pictures don't really do it justice. Just how impressive that was.
No, but the one thing that while Bill was unfortunately laid up in the hotel on Saturday. I did actually get to go back to the con and walk around with several people, and also get some time chatting with different artists and writers at the tables. I did go to another panel as well. I checked out the Autobio panel, which again, I'm so happy I did. The panels here at HeroesCon, and this is one of the things with HeroesCon, it is a creator forward con, one of the best. I mean, if you go there, you're there to see the writers, the artists, the colorists, the letterers, the people that make the books that you love to read. And while you're there, you're probably going to meet or see a lot of new creators that you haven't read before and get some new favorites. And the Autobio panel is another great example of those, getting these creators together to talk about their work in a way that really encourages people, attendees to check it out. The LGBTQIA panel was really great, talking about characters, attended by people like Stephanie Williams, even Georges Jonti, Cullen Bunn. We saw the Hickman panel, which was great, him talking about his work. The Jeff Smith panel talking about the history of bone.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Fascinating stuff.
Fascinating.
And where else can you see that in such an intimate setting? Because even though it was a big room, there weren't a ton of people that you could get up relatively close and personal with a lot of these people without having to go down to the floor, where you can also still get up and close and personal with them.
The story of Art Spiegelman's role in ensuring that bone for Scholastic would be in color. I mean, great story.
Why don't you colorize it? Why don't you colorize it, Jeff?
Yeah, but I'm in the Holocaust.
Yeah, it's like, you don't want it to be as pretty as mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also, these panels were just fascinating. And after the Autobio panel, I went and got to chat with Noah Van Sciver, and a new voice that I hadn't heard before, Kayla E, and also Zoe Thorogood, who if those of you who've been watching or listening for a while, I spoke about, her book from a few months ago, which I still have here, actually. Because I do pull it out every once in a while to take a look. It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth, which, beautiful book. I got to chat with her about that, which was really nice. We also got to see some other people that hopefully we'll be having on the show pretty soon. I have been talking with them afterwards, so we'll see if they'll be joining us in the next couple of months to talk about their work. But yeah, I mean, it's a great show for that. And I'm happy I got to go on Saturday, because Friday I bought next to nothing. Saturday I did pick up a lot. So, a lot of different books here at the con that I was able to find. Wave Blue World, I was able to pick up The Color of Always, and of course, Young Men in Love. Thankfully was able to get my hands on those, all of them signed. They come with bookmarks, just all sorts of great things. Got a whole bunch of stuff from Noah Van Sciver, talked with him for a bit. Also, got some work here from some new people that we haven't seen before, that we might be talking to soon. So it's, there's some great stuff. And I was happy that I was able to do that on Saturday. Sadly, while Bill was...
That was my plan for Saturday.
Yeah. So when
Steve and John were walking around, my literal words to you, why don't we meet up later and let me take care of my bullshit, with the bin diving.
And I'm glad you got to get that.
I'm glad I got to do it, but I didn't do enough of it.
Yeah. There's always the next con.
Yeah, so. But it's like I'm an adult and I have a lot of stuff. If I were like in my 30s, I would have felt like so gypped to only have one at that. But it's you roll with the punches. I much rather would have been at the con than in a half awake stupor with Unsolved Mysteries reruns on the background in the hotel room.
You did have that on. You had the Pluto TV Unsolved Mysteries channel on when I left later, and when I got back.
And then later, and then when you got back, it was Ancient Aliens. I put that on. which is not stuff I normally watch.
Mm.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
You were a little bit late this evening.
But
Um,
it's also worth mentioning that the chaos didn't end there. Like the Flash went off relatively smoothly, and then
yes,
dinner.
we saw that on Monday or
Then
Sunday. We saw that Sunday after we got back.
Yeah, and then on Monday, and this was kind of twisted. We decided we were going to go to the sort of Mayberry town that's popped up
Mount
in North
Airy,
Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Juneteenth, and what do? We go to the whitest town in America. But Mother Nature said, no, that's not a very good idea, and we got stuck in a downpour. We ended up in a parking lot with a Walgreens that was a trailer. It was just that whole bit was surreal. I was nervous. You saw how nervous I was about the trip home, which was totally justified because my plane was supposed to leave at 8:05 and it left at 1:30 in the morning. At one point, it was scheduled to leave at 2:30 in the morning. Oh, it was just bizarre, and all the time with the injured paw and it just wasn't a very good trip for me. But I got to see my friend Steve. We did have some things that went off without a hitch. And you've heard about them between day one of the con and the Flash and the art auction. So,
yeah, and I'm glad we did it, even though unfortunately you got laid up on day 2 and day 3. It was just sort of like, okay, where can we go and what can we do where you don't have to be on your feet?
Then I'm also thinking, there were some moments that were lucky. I was very lucky. The hotel had a wheelchair. There was no way I could have made it to the art auction that night without you pushing me around. Like Blanche Hudson. Yeah. So
yeah. No, I'm glad we did it. I wish it was less filled with injury and
all right.
But next time.
Yeah, next time. So why don't we talk? We still got about like 23 minutes left in the show. Why don't we talk about some comics we're reading completely outside of the Flash and cons? That we're doing. So Steve, tell us about a book that you're reading that you're enjoying. We probably don't have enough time to get through 2, but we can at least make a recommendation on the second. So
absolutely. So one of the books I read, this is actually non-com related. I picked this up the day you arrived, Bill. We went out, we checked out some stores locally, Sailfish here in Winston-Salem. I overwhelmed you by taking you to McKay's after that. But
McKay's. Like the first 5 minutes, I was just like, this was me. I was like, I mean, a used store that deals in toys, DVDs and Blu-rays, comic books and albums.
Yeah. And video games,
I'd be there every
music instruments, and
I know every member of the staff that worked there.
Yep.
It was unreal. I was not prepared for it. I was overwhelmed by it. Yeah.
No, but I pre-whelmed him by taking him to a very nice local store, and also we checked out Hippo Records.
Yes.
Which was next door to that. So, but while I was at Sailfish, I did pick up Xeno, which is a new anthology out from Oni Press. This one has several contributors: Chris Condon, Nick Cagnetti, Melissa Flores, Daniel Irizarry, Phil Hester, Jordan Thomas, and Shaky Kane. So a lot of really cool names. Some I'm not too familiar with, some I'm more familiar with. But it's fun. It's a fun sort of sci-fi, goofy anthology. Some of those stories are pretty, oh my gosh, and some of them are kind of fun in that Far Side way. But the art is wacky. There's just great colors for this. Everything pops. And the stories are, maybe about 4 to 6 pages long, some a little bit longer. And they're just great, quick reads. It's just fun. It's a fun anthology. So you get several stories like this one where a gentleman's given new eyes that allow him to see beyond the normal human perception of color spectrum. So he can see auras, he can see floating creatures that are there that are outside of normal human view. And unfortunately, this, of course, because it's a sci-fi horror anthology, there's something that he sees that he doesn't want to see anymore, and you get to see more of that. We have a gentleman who he's a super gamer, and this gaming company wants to hook him up with this new sort of like AR game that they inject him with, and it's like, oh, you're going to see this great game experience. It's only going to be experienced by you. You're the console. Your body becomes the console. And so he, imagines himself as an assassin doing these crazy things. Wakes up, and maybe it wasn't just a game. Maybe somebody actually died, as you see from this panel here. But there's some, there's some other great stories. There's one that, it involves sort of like the Red Scare and robots controlled by rabbits. So yeah, it's fun. Check it out. It's by Oni Press. The first issue came out this month, and it is going to be a limited series. Next issue is out in July. Pick it up at your local store if you're interested in, kind of fun, short, sometimes goofy, sometimes scary sci-fi.
I was on mute.
Yep.
The book I want to talk about is also an anthology, but there's also substantial Flash ties, though it's not a Flash book. And I'll get into that. So, Steve, if you can put up the graphic, this is one of the covers. This was the Kickstarter cover when they did initially solicit this. This is by Adam Hughes, and this is the Rocketeer one-shot. That's the official name of it. The Rocketeer one-shot. It's not planes, dames, and rockets. Beautiful cover there by Adam Hughes. There are other covers that are by Jay Lee, by Gabriel Rodriguez. Absolutely stunning cover by Clayton Crane. But the cover that I got was a different Adam Hughes cover. And this is the version that I got, which is known as cover A, which features Cliff Secord, the Rocketeer, and his girlfriend Betty, based on Betty Page. This is an anthology with 3 stories. And the Flash connection is the first story is written by Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, who were the showrunners and the main headed the writers' room and the co-creators of the Flash 1990 series, and also contributed to the script of the 1993 or 4. I always forget what year the film was. 2, 3, or 4, somewhere in there. The early 90s Rocketeer film from Disney. They wrote the initial treatment. I think there were some other writers credited, but they certainly were involved with that. And the first story is great. Again, mentioning Adam Hughes, he does the art for this short story, and it goes through Cliff Secord's connections with Amelia Earhart. And it takes place in 1938, which is a year after she had disappeared. There was a point where, as a fan, he met up with Amelia, and they exchanged good luck tokens. He had basically like a Cracker Jack Shamrock. She accepted it, and she gave him some wings from one of her flights, and it really meant a lot to him. And again, this was at a point where she had been missing for a year, and he goes to the Aleutian Islands where she and her co-pilot disappeared, finds some brief bits of wreckage in a camp, but nothing else, and it stays a mystery. But it's a really touching story about the particular connection that aviators have with one another. Really wonderful story. Second story is so much fun. Written by Kelvin Mao with art by Craig Cermak, about Betty wanting to go to a particular lecture, and Cliff is late, and there's also some thieves at the lecture, and Cliff's dog is involved. It's a really fun 8-page story. And then there's a third 8-page story that is written by Robert Wyndham with stunning art by Jay Lee. 4-page story that basically tells you everything you need to know about Cliff and Betty's relationship in 4 short pages. There is another Rocketeer miniseries that's coming out in July through IDW that's not connected to these stories, but if you need a little bit of Rocketeer fix for $4.99, you certainly can't do worse than this, the Rocketeer one-shot from IDW.
Cool. That's and just so you know, the Rocketeer film was 1991,
91.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, 91, directed by Joe Johnston, starring Billy Campbell and Jennifer Connelly. I remember when that came out, they promoted it so much on the Disney Channel. It was like constant making of and clips of and everything, and I absolutely love the movie.
Yeah. And
when it came
you know,
out. I had no idea that it was related to comics.
And there hasn't been a hell of a lot of Rocketeer merch out there. There's statues, there's some figures out there, but a lot of them, the mass market merch, is related to the film. And for a long time, you could find stuff at really, really inexpensive prices, and now they're slowly going up. So I wonder.
There might be something else along the way.
So Steve, yeah, go ahead.
One thing that we've neglected to do, we have been joined by several people here who've been making some comments, and we're gonna feature them a little bit. We had James Figueredo. Good evening, you handsome gents. Hope your foot's better, Bill. And yes,
it is getting better.
It has got better, which is great. We also had John Westoff, who unfortunately could not join us
because he had his own bullshit tonight.
He had a whole bunch of stuff that he had to do back at home, so he wasn't able to come to HeroesCon this year.
Yeah.
So no
He
HeroesCon
also had a YouTube event tonight too.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So the art that is donated is always insane. Very true. And he did mention, of course, Bill Zenowitz is pretty much hell on wheels.
Hell on wheels.
If hell goes.
And as I was telling people, I am not a natural when it comes to navigating with a wheelchair. I would be an absolute failure at murder ball. I would be dependent upon the kindness of familiar people and strangers. It would be, I'm more determined to get in better shape than ever before after spending just like 4 hours in a wheelchair. So maybe this is
little door jams are your arch enemy, Bill, when it comes to being in a wheelchair.
That one hump in the hotel.
It's like, what were they doing?
It's just a little
we also are.
Yeah.
I know.
Hey, Tony.
You can't roll over it. We got Tony Gilkinson joining us. Hey guys, went on a walk and have been listening, but forgot to say hello.
Hey, Tony.
Hello, hello, Tony.
Look at Tony's pose.
I know, yeah. For those of you who are seeing, you get the pose right there. That's pretty cool. So, but yeah. And thanks, Bill, you were saying, you were saying before I rudely interrupted with.
I was just saying that, if we have another book that we can very quickly recommend, we should.
Yeah, so I'm going to very, very quickly recommend it just because I picked it up at the con. This is one of the books I picked up, and I've actually had a chance to read. Is Noah Van Sciver's My Hot Date, featuring a very young 12 to 14-year-old Noah Van Sciver. It is a true story, and as it says, it's over 2 million copies sold. Well, not really, but it is his best-selling book, which is pretty cool. And reading it, it's easy to see if you really want to see the most embarrassing, or what he has said is one of the most embarrassing times of his life. Drawn large on the page. Definitely check it out. My Hot Date by Noah Van Sciver.
His was one of the booths I really wanted to hit.
It was fun. I did have a nice chat with him.
Yeah. So. In my book, I know you have a graphic, but I also have a different cover. And this came out last month. Issue 2 came out today. I haven't seen it yet. But this is a book I was very much looking forward to, and it did not disappoint. And that's Titans #1, written by Tom Taylor with art by Nicola Scott. Certainly one hell of an Australian 1-2 punch. And that's the main cover. I actually got a different cover here, if you can zoom in a little bit on that. And this was the variant cover by Jim Lee, showing the various members of the Titans. And where we are at, it's very much a continuation of the last 4 or 5 issues of Nightwing, and rolling off of things that happened with Lazarus Planet. There is no Justice League. They entrust Dick Grayson to lead the new Justice League, and he says there's already a team in place, and that's the Titans, and we're going to become the preeminent team. And great cameo by Peacemaker, which kind of is establishing what the particular Titans status quo is. And there's a big factor with what's happening with Wally in terms of Flash content and that. So great superhero book. Looking forward to where it goes. Next issue features Brother Blood. which I think is very often a hit or miss character. But in Tom Taylor's hands, I'm really fascinated to see what he does with that.
Yeah.
So there's some books. We do have some gets that are non-con related. So Steve, what do you have?
Well, I do. This is actually con related, but I did want to point it out because it's very cool.
Oh no, I think Disney Movie Insiders.
Oh, we do have that. We'll get. I think we can do that.
Yeah, you could do that. Do that right after this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have this very, very large format copy of The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott by Zoe Thorogood that I was able to pick up from her and get a nice, a nice little signature from her. But I've been looking forward to reading this since I read her book about herself, because she mentions, heavily in the book about this, and I was really excited to grab this copy from her and tell her how much I obviously loved her other book. So I'm excited to read that. And I think we did get a Geek Get together, Bill. Or
yeah,
at least
I guess it's a mutual.
Yeah.
And that's
that's right. It's Amazing Spider-Man something or other. I don't know. I haven't opened it up to check which number it is.
20 something. Yeah.
We're not going to know because you can't tell from the cover. But it's another one of our wonderful Disney Insiders free variant covers. This one showing off Infinity Gauntlet, but with Pete as Thanos. And Goofy as Spider-Man. Minnie as Captain America. Just Mickey as Sorcerer Supreme.
Well, my favorite, Pluto as the surfer.
The Silver Surfer.
I just love that.
It's just adorable.
It's just really cool. And
yeah, that's the latest of them.
We've advocated for this many times, but join those rewards programs because you get gratis
free
shit
stuff.
like this. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
So for my Geek Get, I'm old as sand. I just talked about reading The Flash in the 70s. And in my day, if you got an action figure based on a superhero, it was from Mego. And Mego is, after they reactivated in 2018, are celebrating the 50 years anniversary of the world's greatest superheroes line of 8-inch figures. And this is the second wave of those. This was intended for the first wave, and these are in, what are consistent with the original boxes that came out in the 70s before they went to where they went into peg formatting. So here's Green Arrow, which was one of the most elegant figures that they produced in the 70s. And we also got the villains. So we got 3 of the 4 original villains repros. So we have the Penguin.
Ooh.
We have the Joker.
Nice.
And we have the Riddler. Again, these were, very much inspired by the costumes on the Batman 66 series.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, a few years later, they had a Batman 66 one. And then, they're sprinkling characters that they didn't issue as figures in the 70s. So this time around, since it was a villain-dominated wave, got Reverse Flash. And this is a really nice figure. Really nice.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I think this is Manipul and Bucoletto on the back. I think that's their stock art.
Probably is, actually.
So it's all tied in.
That's so cool.
You know what, Steve? I brought this out. I wasn't going to talk about it, but this is another book that you could talk about since it has 2 of the 3 main characters from The Flash in a multiversal situation. Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Oh, yeah, of course.
When you talk about Kara and Barry, big developments for those characters in here. Not
for
positive,
both of them.
big developments. But before I go on my, geek culture embargo in regards to multiverse stuff. If you've never read Crisis on Infinite Earths, it's from my perspective, it's mandatory reading in much the same way that Sgt. Pepper's Only Hearts Club Bland is mandatory listening and Citizen Kane is mandatory viewing. I just think it's a watershed event that I think everyone should sample at some point. Should have talked about that. I didn't even realize.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's so obvious, or it's like, oh, of course, that's a great book. But there are people who haven't read it yet, and may not have known that it's what it's.
And it's also worth mentioning my figures arrived at 6:33 p.m. So this is the first time I've held them. So
Now you just have to take them out of the boxes and play with them.
Not till I get duplicates.
There you go.
Not till I get duplicates on a discount level. I've already have my plan. Plan. Yeah.
And then you're going to pose them all over the place. And
yep. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to start wrapping this show up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him, or possibly rawr. There are variations. There are variants in the meta multiverse. And we do something very similar here where we effectively woof at something. It may be a comic book, but it may also be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or possibly viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, my Woof of the Week is, to no surprise for people who listen for a while, I recommend a TV show almost all the time. Not every time, but a lot of the times. This one is probably not a surprise to anybody who is also a geek. Strange New Worlds, Star Trek, Strange New Worlds is back. As of tonight's recording, this is the second episode that's been released. The first episode was absolutely fantastic, wonderful. Introduced a brand new character in a brand new species, played by the wonderful Carol Kane. Oh my God.
The future Emmy-nominated Carol Kane.
Future Emmy-nominated for some Best Supporting Actress.
No
TV.
justice if she's not if she is not earmarked for one of the either guest appearance or supporting actress.
Oh gosh, I am so excited to see more of her.
Oh my God, she would just, she owned every frame of content she was on. Oh, wonderful.
And this is such a wonderful cast overall. So she's already joining a great cast of people, and just is a wonderful addition to them. And then the episode for this week, again, there's not a lot of continuity necessarily in these. There's a lot of like one week, one episode, one story kind of situations, kind of with the
much like the original series.
Yeah, much like the original series or the Next Generation. But the second one is a trial episode for those of you who remember all the way back to the original series, The Menagerie, which was kind of a way of recutting and representing the original pilot. There's some callbacks to that. The Cage, yeah. There's some callbacks to that here in this episode. There's also callbacks to the Data trial from the Next Generation. I almost just broke down in tears with this one. It was beautiful, with again another wonderful guest appearance by another actress this time, and I've just forgotten her name and I apologize, but she also played the character of Bilquis in the recent Neil Gaiman American Gods series. So if you loved her in that, you will love her here. She is fantastic, just all around, just a great episode, and hit after hit after hit. See it if you haven't watched Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It is all available right now on Paramount Plus in the US, and I believe Netflix elsewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, check it out, please.
Okay. And also mentioning we watched that together, the first episode together. That was cool. All right. My Wolf of the Week goes out to something else that is streaming. It is a documentary film, and there's been a little bit of invented controversy over this, and that's Stan Lee on the Disney Channel. It goes through his life and career. It's all taken from audio. So he effectively is the narrator of the film. You do hear little bits from some other people, Joan Lee, Roy Thomas, Jack Kirby, Joe Simon. There's a couple of other voices in there, but it's mostly Stan's voice. And, the actual chronology is a little bit twisted, but not so much that it takes away your enjoyment from it. And I've always felt whatever you felt about the various Stan controversies. Yes, he was a self-promoter, but he was also probably the best ambassador for comics we've ever had. And it's not hyperbole to say, if he did not take the steps that he and Jack did with Fantastic Four #1, this podcast might not exist. That art form may have taken very different turns at later points, which may have been valid, but comics as we know them owe a lot to Stan. It's plain and simple. And, there has been some controversy with some comments from Jack Kirby's son and, the usual people that, think Ditko did everything, Stan did nothing. All I can say is read one issue of any book that Jack produced after he left Marvel, and you'll see what Stan Lee's contribution was. I've always said this: Stan was never better than when he was with Jack, with the possible exception of those first 41 Spider-Man stories. And certainly Jack and Steve were never as good as they were with Stan. And they don't shy away from that particular controversy or where Stan fell, where he came down on it. And, for people with the commentary, I watched it just earlier today. There's a tremendous amount of bandwidth dedicated to both Jack and Steve. Tremendous amount of bandwidth. You wouldn't necessarily see that with some other documentary topics about their co-creators, So, I do think some of Stan's bad rap is justified in the kind of Carnival Barker aspect, but at the same token, the man did a tremendous service to the art form as we know it. And I think you do come away with that sense from this film. And just especially to see footage from the Marvel conventions in the 1970s and there's a Tomorrow Show appearance with Tom Snyder with Julius Schwartz and Carmen Infantino and Stan, and a failed TV pilot that Stan did. And I gotta tell you this, this is not something you normally would say, but there was a period when Stan was with the toupee and the full beard with it. There was a window in the 70s where Stan could get it. I'll be honest.
You heard it here first, folks.
And I enjoyed seeing that too, but I do think he was, even if some of it was bullshit and if he got stuff wrong, he often did in his recollections, but he was just a great teller of stories, and that comes through in this documentary. So Stan Lee on Disney Plus.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right. Well, that's our show. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can download us through Apple Podcasts. Listen to us through Stitcher Radio and many of the other podcatching platforms. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you joined us through Facebook Live, thank you. If you are watching this later on YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. Until that time, I'm Billy Z.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. If you're listening to the audio version, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.
Woof.